So today's lesson actually starts with a reminder. I was just saying we'll be studying Central Canada this this lesson today. And Central Canada is one of those 5 geographic regions that we split Canada into when we study it to make it easier to study and to understand. So for our purposes today, Central Canada, we're talking about Ontario and Quebec. So we're starting local with your destination classes, and we're going, by the time you get to the end of third semester, all around the world with these destination classes. But today we're starting local. We're starting in our own province, and we will take a look at our own city, even of Hamilton. So there is a reminder first to email me by Saturday with your city's request email. And in case you're wondering what that is, it has to do with your research paper. So make sure you go onto Canvas, look at the research paper module, download all of the documents and read them through. There's also a video now of when we spoke about the research paper and how to do the research paper. So make sure you watch that too if you weren't here in class. But part of that research paper is you sending me an email saying city's request in the subject line. And then in the body of the email, I need to see who's in your group, if you are in a group, or if you're doing it individually, that's fine too. Just make sure you send me an email with that information, whether you have a partner or you're doing it by yourself. And I will write back with 2 cities that you'll research for that research paper. So that needs to be done before Saturday. And there's an announcement that's scheduled to go out Saturday morning to remind you. And I'll remind you again at the end of this class. So really no excuse to forget. So that's just a quick reminder before we get started talking about Central Canada. And I mentioned last week, or maybe yesterday. No, it was last week, that I start most of my destinations lessons asking people if they've been to the area. Now, most of you, I imagine, are in Canada. Some of you might be international. So instead of saying, have you been here to Central Canada, which is Ontario and Quebec, maybe I'll ask you in the picture, first of all, what do you think that is? Where do you think that is? That you see the picture on the left. And once you know what it is, have you been there to that specific city?
Is that Parliament?
It is. It is. So it's Parliament, which makes sense that it would be our capital city. So we're looking at Ottawa in the picture. So has anyone been to Ottawa? We'll look at it more in depth today when we get there.
I went on like a school trip in the 7th grade.
Okay, very nice. Anyone else? Remember, you can put in your participant section a little green. Oh, I don't have it. A little green check mark or a red X. Ottawa, I went there about a year ago. It was nice. It's not too far from here. If you're up for a bit of a longer drive, it's about, I think it was 5 hours or so. And it was quite nice. It's just everything was closed. It was during one of our lockdowns, but it's nice of enough of a city just to walk around and look at the buildings. So good to know who's been there. And if you haven't, then we'll learn about it today. So Central Canada, as you can see on the map over on the right, is Ontario, which is what I'm tracing now with my mouse, and Quebec, which is the largest by area, the largest province in Canada. But first we'll look at Ontario. So these maps are pretty high resolution. So if you ever think maybe it's too small, I can't read it, the words are not big enough, you can download these PowerPoints on Canvas and zoom into these maps. They're very high definition or high resolution. So in case you're finding it a bit small. So what we're looking at here is Ontario. They tend to break it down into different areas. You've got Northern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario. This is what they call Eastern Ontario. Anything north of like North Bay, Sudbury-ish, that's considered Northern Ontario. Most of the population lives along the southern border here in between Windsor, which is right beside Detroit. It's not labeled, and all the way up to Ottawa. However, people do live up north. The further north you go, the smaller the communities are. The capital city of the province is Toronto, not the capital city of the country. That's different. The major gateway into the province is the Toronto Airport. The airport code is YYZ. And remember, for this class, you don't need to remember airport codes, but you do need to be able to identify them. So an airport code is always 3 letters, never numbers. So you might see a question on your tests that says, which of the following is an airport code? And you'll see something that might say AC or 200 or YYZ. And then you have to choose the one that's an airport code. So it's always 3 letters. And that's why you see these codes beside the names of these cities, just in case you're curious, and eventually in a different class, you'll need to learn them. Ontario is home to the country's capital city, Ottawa, and you can see it marked here with a big star, a big yellow star. It's right on the border of Quebec, and the airport code there is YOW. So we'll be looking at a few places around Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara Falls today, as well as the capital city of the country, Ottawa, we'll take a closer look at. But first, here's a video from the Ontario Tourism Board that we'll take a look at before we dive right in. So most of the videos we watch in the class, usually they're at least in the destination courses, they're from DMOs, which is Destination Marketing Organizations. So that was from Tourism Ontario, who put out advertisements across the world and try to get people to come here as tourists. So that one was for the UK. You could see in the address at the end /UK. So DMOs are an essential part of the tourism industry, getting people to go to different places, of course. So most of those videos that we watch will be anywhere between 1 minute and 2 minutes. That one was 15 seconds. But sometimes I can only find short ones that are good quality and up to date. So let's first go to Toronto. Let me get my picture out of the way for now so you can see what's written there. So Toronto is the capital city of the province of Ontario. It is the country's most populated city, but it's not the capital city. That is Ottawa. What is Toronto known for? It's known for multiculturalism. It's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. Multiculturalism is a big, long word that just means that lots of different people from lots of different places live there. Skyscrapers at any given point, if you go to Toronto, you'll see that there's just cranes and buildings going up and so lots of skyscrapers. And it is the economic heart of the country where all of the business dealings take place. We are influenced by other provinces and their exports like Alberta and the oil. But this is where the stock market is, the Toronto Stock Exchange. And so it's a pretty big center financially. There's lots and lots and lots of things to do in Toronto. It is the biggest city, like I said, in the country. There's lots of concerts, lots of museums. There's so much to do, but the things from a tourism perspective, that's what we need to look at in this course. So you might know a wonderful little store that's there. that you could tell people if they're interested to come here and go to Toronto. But what we're looking at here in this course are the big things. What are the really big things that tourists want to do when they go to a place? So here you can see a few different experiences, and experiences are what we sell in tourism and in travel. You can't sell, well, let's say I'm buying this candle. Before I buy it, I can smell it, I can look at it. If I'm buying this sweater, I can try it on, make sure it fits. Is it warm enough? Is it itchy? Is it made out of something like wool? But travel, you can't do that. It's something that you buy that you haven't experienced yet. So instead of buying something material, like something that you purchase and bring home, like a candle or a piece of clothing, we're buying something what they call intangible. That means you can't touch it. And so instead of putting it out there like you're buying something physical, something material, we sell experiences. And that's how you can describe it to people who ask what happens in the tourism industry. Well, we sell experiences, we sell memories, and that kind of gets people in the dreaming mode. So that's why I've put some of the experiences here. Some of the tourist experiences include the CN Tower, which you can see here, the really tall one, the ROM, we call it Royal Ontario Museum. There's the Path, which comes in handy in the winter. The Toronto Islands, which is probably where this picture was taken from. Concerts, events, because it's such a big city, they have just about everything. I mean, there's a ballet company, there's a symphony orchestra, there's Canadian Opera Company is based there, there's art galleries, there's plays that go on, you know, there's a little bit of everything. There's giant, really, really popular sports events, sports teams like the Toronto Raptors, Blue Jays, they all are based in the city of Toronto. So let's go to each of these tourist sites and see what sorts of experiences they offer. First things first, has anyone here done that on the left in the picture? It's called the Sky Walk, I believe.
My buddy's older brother actually used to be like one of the employees who'd go up on the ledge.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's all I know about it though.
Wow. Wow. Anyone else done it? I have not. You'll learn as we go through these courses that I don't like heights. So unfortunately, with every international visitor who comes to Canada, they always want to go to the CN Tower. So I find myself in there much more frequently than I'd like. I mean, I never go outside. Like I wouldn't do that. There is an outdoor observation deck right about there. I don't even go out there. I just stay inside near the middle and just hope that they've had enough and we can leave quickly. So that's the CN Tower. It stands for the Canadian National Tower. And this is one of the iconic parts of the skyline of Toronto. It's 553.3 meters tall. And when COVID's not around, it attracts more than 2 million visitors every year. It was the world's tallest freestanding structure for a really long time, from when it was built in the 70s to 2007. And that's when it was surpassed by what's called the Burj Khalifa. And that's now the world's tallest building. That's in the city of Dubai in the country United Arab Emirates. And it's really tall. It's I don't know offhand, but it's definitely much taller than the CN Tower. But for now, the CN Tower is still the tallest freestanding structure in the Western Hemisphere. So we can still say that. There's an observation deck here where it looks like a white donut. There's a glass floor that you can walk on, and there's a restaurant that rotates. And then up here, where kind of halfway between the tip and that observation deck, there's a little bulb where the tower changes to white. That bulb is called the Sky Pod. And that's the highest observation deck you can get to. And so you can buy this all in one package. You can get a ticket all the way to the Sky Pod. You can get, there's a little gift shop in the bottom, and there's restaurants and stuff. You've got a little story?
I'm using my phone to study now. Can I want to call from my mom. Can I out a little bit?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Can I out a little bit because I'm using my phone to study now for calling my mom.
Okay. Yeah, if you had to leave.
Just 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes.
Yeah, you can leave and come back in. This is also being recorded, so you won't miss anything.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, don't worry if you need to leave for anything. You can leave and come back, just like hopefully when, not if, when we end up back on campus. You don't have to ask if you need to leave. You can just leave and come back as long as you do it quietly, you know. I know that life happens. Sometimes you'll get a phone call from your parents, and your parents, somebody has surgery that day. So I know sometimes it's important to have to make calls and take calls. So not a problem. This is being recorded. Just leave, come back when you need, if that ever happens for you. And yes, Edge Walk, not Skywalk. It's called Edge Walk. So that's what you can do. It's relatively a new experience. They added it recently. And it's for people who enjoy adventure tourism and extreme tourism, which we'll talk about that quite a bit as we go through these destination courses. The different types of travelers. So those are called target markets. So someone who might be interested in adventure travel or extreme sports travel, they might like something like this, and that's a target market. Elsewhere in Toronto, you have what I called earlier the ROM, Royal Ontario Museum. It is the biggest museum in Canada by square footage, and it has art. There's lots of world relics and exhibitions that you can see there. There's natural history sections of the ROM with skeletons from whales and dinosaurs and things. And that brings in about 1 million tourists every year. It was quite controversial when this new addition was built on that you see in the picture. But it's on that same list with all these other buildings that were controversial at one point, but we just accept them now. Like the Louvre Museum in Paris, they have a pyramid in front of it made out of glass. And when that was built, not many people liked it. Well, some people were for it, some people were against it, but now we accept it as part of the museum. So that's the same case or the same story with this big piece that juts out into the city. I mentioned the path earlier. The path is an underground network of pathways that are lined with shops and restaurants, and some of them connect to office buildings and malls and hotels. So it's a huge system of pathways, like the name might suggest. So it's called the path, and it connects lots of downtown, but it's all inside and underground. Most of it is underground. So in the winter, like January, February, for example, you don't have to leave and go outside. So it's pretty convenient. It's actually the largest underground shopping complex in the world. So they do exist elsewhere, and we'll talk about them as we get to those different places in the world who have them. But it's really convenient. I mean, it connects if you want to go from Union Station, which is the train station, the main big one, or the bus station at Union Station. You can go all the way up to Dundas Square at Yonge and Dundas underground. It's a bit tricky. They're kind of like a maze, but they have these maps posted everywhere for you. And the picture you see here is the Eaton Center, the really big mall at Yonge and Dundas. Speaking of the Union Station, where you would arrive by train or by bus when you go to Toronto that way, right across the street from it is what they call the Royal York Hotel, and it's a Fairmont hotel. So some people might call it the Royal York, some people might call it the Fairmont. So Fairmont is a bigger company that owns a bunch of different hotels across Canada, and they're usually quite fancy. So this one was opened in 1929. It was the tallest building in Toronto when it was opened. and it's one of Canada's grand railway hotels. So they built a lot of these hotels, and where they built them was close to railways. It is a royal, it's got the name royal on it, which means that it's been approved, of course, by the Queen. So this is where members of the royal family stay when they come to Toronto. So past guests have included Prince Charles, Prince Harry, and the Queen herself. I've stayed at this hotel lots of times, not because I'm rich, but because when you're a travel agent, you can afford it because you get a discount. It's about $100 a night with your discount. Otherwise, I think it's around 300, 400 a night plus, depending what type of room you'd like. There are suites and so on, which go more expensive. But if you wanted to spoil yourself, once you get into the industry, you'll get something called an IATA card, which is a card that's given away or given out by that organization called the International Air Transport Association, which I don't know, maybe you can't see it because my background is blurred, I believe, but this is the card. It's called an IATA card. And that's what gets you discounts in the travel industry. So about $100 a night to stay there. I worked at a travel agency for about 5 years, starting in 2013, 4 years, 4.5, whatever, doesn't matter. But anyway, during my training, I stayed here for free. Flight Center was the name of the company. It's still around, and they paid for me to stay here. I think for about 2 weeks, I stayed in the Fairmont and had my training in Toronto. So that was nice. And I took the path every day because it was February. So I took the path from the Fairmont all the way up to the office there where we would have our training. So the word Fairmont will come up again today and in other classes where we study Canada. It's a really big chain of very fancy hotels. Okay, that's it for Toronto. And as we go through, again, these destination courses, you'll notice that we go pretty quickly through these destinations because there's so much to talk about. There is a lot more to do in Toronto than what we just saw, of course. But we need to make our way through these lessons, so we just look at the highlights. So Hamilton, of course, we have to talk about Hamilton. That's where Mohawk College is. That's where I am right now. That's where some of you are right now. It is the city I was born and raised in. So of course, I really like it. There's so much to talk about, so much to see. If you were born here like me, if you've just moved here for school, if you don't live here at all, but you're close, there's a lot to see and do. And I encourage you to pick something touristy that you haven't done before and just do it. Last week, I talked about the Art Gallery of Hamilton and how that's free every Thursday. You can go there. It's free. I mean, that's the best thing about it on Thursdays. It's something to do, and it's a bit touristy, you know, and they have a bunch of different artwork by local artists, international artists, Indigenous artists. It's a really cool place. There's a bunch of other museums to go to, not just galleries. We'll look at one right now called Dundurn Castle. This is probably the #1 thing when people come to visit me from abroad, international people, they want to see Dundurn Castle in Hamilton. Probably because they've Googled Hamilton and things to do, and this comes up first. But this is down on York Boulevard at the end of Dundurn Street. And you've probably seen it if you've been to Hamilton, at least driven past it, but you can absolutely go and visit. Don't know about now with the lockdowns, but I went here in December. They had they decorated for Christmas in the way it did, in the way it looked in Victorian times, which is when Queen Victoria, that's why it's called Victorian times, when Queen Victoria was on the throne. So it's done really nicely. And we had a nice tour and they gave us cookies and everything else. It was wonderful. So something to do if you haven't done it, you should. It's not free, but it's a wonderful experience. It was the home of Sir Allan MacNab, who was kind of the leader of Canada before Canada was a country. He was the Prime Minister, the Premier of Upper Canada, which is now Ontario. Today, it's a museum, and there's a really big garden on the grounds, which they call a kitchen garden. And so in the summer, they grow a bunch of vegetables there and they cook with it in their kitchens. The last couple of years, the castle's been closed through lockdowns or really limited capacity. So the vegetables and the foods that they create with those vegetables, like they make preserves and jams and things, and they grow vegetables. They have been donating them to food banks, which is quite nice. So really cool place to go check out. The other thing about Hamilton is that it's sometimes called the waterfall capital of the world because we are on the escarpment, which is essentially just a big cliff. A lot of water falls over that cliff and creates waterfalls. So Hamilton itself has over 100 waterfalls. The one that's pictured is called Webster Falls, and it's really beautiful. You can see there's a bridge here. There's a lawn on the side that you can have a picnic, where you can have a picnic. It's quite nice. But there's so many other waterfalls to go see as well. If you know the area, if you're going from Old Ancaster, not Meadowlands, but the older section, and you go down that escarpment towards Dundas or McMaster University, there's a little parking lot on the right-hand side of the street where you can park, and there's a waterfall in there called Tiffany Falls. And it's a really easy hike, maybe 10 minutes maximum. And it's a nice little trail with bridges and you can see the waterfall. And then across the street from that parking lot, there's 2 other waterfalls that you can access through a longer trail. Might take you an hour, hour and a half round trip. To learn more about those waterfalls, to find which one's close to you, if you're interested, you can download this lesson, this PowerPoint, and click there, and that will bring you to the Waterfalls Guide website. So we're leaving Hamilton already. I mean, like I said, we're only looking at the really main things that tourists want to see and do when they go to a place. So we didn't even talk about the fantastic restaurants around here or anything like that, but we do need to move on. Lots of the time when people come to this area, as tourists, they'll go to Toronto and Niagara Falls because they're close to each other. Hamilton's right in the middle. I mean, on a good day, if traffic didn't exist, you could get to Toronto in 45 minutes. You can get to Niagara Falls in 45 minutes. We're pretty much right in the middle. So Niagara Falls, speaking of waterfalls, we definitely don't have something like this in Hamilton. Even though we are the city of waterfalls. We're moving on now to Niagara Falls. And this is world famous. There's a couple things to talk about when we talk about Niagara Falls. It's created when the water goes from Lake Erie into Lake Ontario. It goes through the Niagara River and falls over the same escarpment, the same cliff that Hamilton is built on. The escarpment is really long. It goes all the way up southern Ontario. And so that's the same cliff that Hamilton's built on. You can see a couple things here. There's a boat. If you haven't done it before, it was called the Maid of the Mist. Now I believe it's called the Hornblower or something like that. It's really, really amazing to take that boat ride. You go right into what they call the Horseshoe Falls, and it's just surrounding you. It's really incredible. The other thing to mention is that this is one place among many in the world where a natural boundary happens. In this case, you've got a tiny bit of New York State visible in the United States, and what you see elsewhere is Ontario. Lots of places in the world have borders that go along a river, and we'll see lots of them even just this semester. But in this case, that river is the border between Canada and the US. Niagara Falls is not just one waterfall though. One waterfall is pictured here, but as we go over here, I'll show you in the next slide, there's actually 2 other waterfalls. So Niagara Falls is actually made out of 3 waterfalls. This one I mentioned already is called the Horseshoe Falls. Looks a bit like a horseshoe. And then on the next slide, I'll show you the American Falls and the Bridal Veil Falls. And these ones are these falls, the Horseshoe Falls, this what you see in the picture, that is in between Canada and the States, kind of belongs to both countries. The other two are only American falls. So here's the other two. The American Falls is the really, really big one you see here. And then the little one over on the right picture, or on the right-hand side of the left picture, is called Bridal Veil. And next to Bridal Veil, you can't really see it on the left picture, but in the right picture you can. There's a staircase. And that staircase is very close to the falls, and it's open for tourists to go in there. But you do have to access it from the United States side. There's a famous movie called Niagara with Marilyn Monroe, and it takes place in Niagara Falls. And there's a very intense scene that takes place on that staircase. And then here is one of those boats again, made of the mist or horn blower or whatever it's called now. They also have a bunch of other things to do there. There's casinos, there's Clifton Hill, which is full of entertainment. There is zip lining, there's lots of stuff you can do. Kind of like the Las Vegas of Canada. Which surprises people, because lots of other big waterfalls in this world, like Iguazu Falls that we'll look at in Brazil and Argentina, it's in the middle of a forest. And so people sometimes expect it to be surrounded by nature, but it's quite the opposite. Once you get there, you see it's really bright and loud and everything. Close to Niagara Falls, maybe within 20 minutes, I'd say, is a little town called Niagara-on-the-Lake. And it's very charming, very popular with tourists in the summer, especially, which is high season for Canada. Lots of wineries are in this area. It's very charming, very small town feel. And there's little boutique shops and souvenir shops. There's fudge stores, candy stores. I was just there during the winter break that we just had, and I had a great time. Quite nice. So we're going to move east now from Niagara Falls, Hamilton, Toronto. We're going towards Ottawa and then eventually Quebec that we'll talk about today. So the Thousand Islands are located in the St. Lawrence Seaway, and they are located between Ontario and New York State. And actually the one that's in this picture belongs to New York, but it's such an impressive building that I put it in this class. So you can take it by going on scenic boat tours and cruises. And these Thousand Islands are split between Canada and the States. Some belong to Canada, some belong to the US. But this, what you see in the picture, is called Bolt Castle. And it's on one of the islands. The island is called Hart Island, and it actually belongs to New York. But you can visit it if you'd like. You can take a boat, and there's passport control and everything, but you can visit and tour that building there. So as we move further east down the St. Lawrence Seaway and the St. Lawrence River, we get to Ottawa, which is the picture we saw at the beginning of the class. And I know that some people have been. I went about a year ago. It was the end of December 2020. So what you see here, there's a lot to see actually. There's Parliament, which is where my mouse is right now. Parliament here, there's the Peace Tower, there's the library, and then Parliament extends this way as well. That's called Parliament Hill, the whole thing. Here in the foreground on the right, you've got a beautiful building that looks like a castle, and it's called Chateau Laurier. Chateau in French means castle, so it makes sense. So let's take a look at Ottawa, our country's capital city. This is where you'll find Parliament, which is what we saw in the picture. This is where you'll find the National Gallery of Canada, which is the art gallery, and the Rideau Canal, which we'll look at in a moment, and Chateau Laurier Hotel, which is here, which is also a Fairmont hotel. So you get an idea of these grand buildings that were built as the railway was expanding through the country. But first we look at Parliament. This is the center block of Parliament with the big Peace Tower that flies the flag on top. Yes, you can go up that tower. Yes, I did it. I wasn't too happy about it, but you can tour the Parliament buildings. The Peace Tower, which is this tall one you see in the picture, it was finished in 1927 and can be accessed in the tour. About 3 million people visit Parliament every year. And in front, you see all these beautiful tulips, and that is a gift from the Dutch. So every year, the Netherlands, the country, the Netherlands, sends 10,000 bulbs of tulips to Canada as a symbol of friendship and as a thank you for helping them during the Second World War. So you see about 1 million of these tulips around the city of Ottawa in the spring when they bloom naturally. The Parliament tour is really cool. I've done it a few times. The last time was a while ago now. It was 2010. So that's at this point, 12 years ago. Oh my goodness. But I was in Ottawa in the winter and I had an international visitor with me. And so we went into Parliament. I didn't realize there would be metal detectors. Perhaps I should have known better. But anyway, to be honest with you, I had a beer in my bag that I carried with me that day. And so we went into Parliament and I thought, oh, well, this should be interesting. So I put it through the metal detector and the guy said, okay, can you open your bag, please? And I said, of course. And he said, we're gonna have to take this from you, but we'll give it back at the end. I said, okay, fine. And so we went on the tour. It was beautiful, amazing tour. The interior is quite nice. And at the end of the tour, of course, I went to the place where you collect your belongings. And lots of the people, it was winter, lots of the people had ice skates that they couldn't bring in because it has a blade on it and everything. So there's families picking up their ice skates. I walked up to the desk. I said, hi, I'm the one with the beer. And they said, oh, okay, well, here you go. We kept it in the fridge for you. So quite nice of them to keep it chilled for me. But so I had a great experience there. It was more about the building itself, not just the beer story, but quite a fun experience to do. I mentioned earlier the National Gallery of Canada. That's what you see in this picture. It's the National Art Gallery. And so this is a gallery that has temporary exhibits, but also a permanent collection of over 93,000 different works. And what you can find there is lots of different types of things, including Indigenous art, European, American, Asian, Canadian works of art in their permanent collection. And then, of course, like most galleries, they have exhibitions that come and go every few months. The Rideau Canal goes through Ottawa, and you can see it in 2 different seasons in these pictures. On the top picture, it's winter, and you can see it frozen over, and there's people skating on it. And in the summer, of course, it's a canal with water. In the winter, when it freezes and you can go skating, it actually becomes the world's longest skating rink. It's 7.8 kilometers long. And most years, they stopped it during COVID, but they're talking about bringing it back this year. They have little huts set up on the actual ice where you can stop and get a hot chocolate or get little souvenirs and things as you skate along. So that's in itself a nice tourist attraction. Moving on to the Chateau Laurier Hotel, which you see here again is a Fairmont hotel. These old, grand, beautiful buildings, and you can actually see the National Gallery behind it there. But this is the Chateau Laurier Hotel, known as Ottawa's Castle. If you're familiar with French, the little marking above the A is called an accent. I call it the little hat. And in Old French, that would mean that there would be an S beside it originally. Now it's written just with the little hat above the A. So that's related to the word castle. Chateau with the S kind of sounds like castle. If you think of it, the word for fete, party, has a little hat above the E. And when you think of the word fest, you think festival and things. So just a little interesting tidbit. There's 429 rooms in this hotel, and it's actually a National Historic Site. It's been deemed protected by the Government of Canada. This one opened in 1912. And if you've been to Disney World in Florida, you will have, if you went to Epcot, you will have seen the Canada Pavilion, they call it, and that's the inspiration, that's where it came from. We will talk about Disney, of course, when we get down into the States and look at Florida. So that's it for now. We're right on the border. When you're in Ottawa, you can walk over a bridge and end up in the province of Quebec. So we're really close. So let's move further east and talk about Quebec. Another little accent there above the E. You see that little marking. So Quebec is the largest province in Canada by area. Ontario's really close, but it's not quite there. Quebec is the biggest one. Capital city of the province is Quebec City. YQB is the airport code. I already mentioned it's Canada's largest province. Montreal, which is one of the larger cities in both Quebec and Canada, it's actually the second most populated city after Toronto. So two of the major cities in the area are fairly close together. The language of Quebec is French, and if you go, it's helpful to learn a couple phrases. You don't have to be an expert, but maybe you can say hello and thank you and where is the washroom? A little bit of effort will go a long way. People appreciate it. So we will look at Montreal, we'll look at Quebec. Excuse me, we'll look at the Gaspé Peninsula. You can see here how the St. Lawrence River goes out and connects all of those Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean. It pours all the water out there. Gaspé Peninsula is that, well, peninsula. Hopefully you've looked at that terminology PowerPoint by now. Is the peninsula that juts out over New Brunswick. And we will look at the island, Magdalen Islands, they're called in English, the Ile de la Madeleine in French. We'll look at those as well. They belong to Quebec. So before we dive into Quebec, here's a bucket list video. So, little glance of what there is to do and what there is to see in Quebec. So first we'll go to Montreal. It is, like I said, the most populated city in Quebec. The French is the official language, but especially in Montreal, lots of people speak English. So it's a little more accessible than Quebec City, where more people speak French. So if you're comfortable, especially international travelers who only know English, maybe it's their second language, then they have no idea about French. Montreal is an easy place to go because lots of people there will speak English. Old Montreal, in French, it's called Vieux Montréal. It's an area with 17th and 18th and 19th century buildings, and it feels a little bit like Paris. That's what you'll see in the top picture. And you've got the Notre Dame Basilica in the bottom picture here. And so what you see in the top is called Rue Saint Paul, and in the bottom it's Notre Dame Basilica. Beautiful places to go. And I didn't ask, sometimes I forget to ask, has anyone been to Quebec? A little yes or no in the participants, a little yes or no in the chat or on your microphone.
I've driven through, that's about it though.
Okay, a means to an end. You were going out east?
Yeah, I was going to Nova Scotia.
Nice, okay. Yeah, so sometimes people just drive through it, that's true, because the highway brings you from Ontario out east. But so I usually ask that before, but sometimes I forget. So moving on, north of Montreal, you have Mont Tremblant and Mont Blanc, and those are ski areas about an hour and a half north of Montreal. So tourists could fly into Montreal and then rent a car and drive up to these ski areas. I had one of my work conferences there in 2017, actually. And when you have a work conference, it's mandatory, which means there's no choice, you have to go. And so they pay for it. So I got my flight from Hamilton direct to Montreal when Air Canada was still doing that route. And then everything was included, the hotel. We had a nice little day where we went on a hike. It was during the summer. We didn't go skiing, but we did stay in this village here. It was a beautiful experience and it was free because it was a conference with the travel industry. So in the summer, like I said, hiking trails, there's golf courses and zip lining and lakes. And in the winter, there's skiing and snowboarding. These mountains are part of what they call the Laurentian Mountain Range. Moving further east to Quebec City, this is the provincial capital. So it's the capital of the province of Quebec. It's on the St. Lawrence River, and it's an old city. It dates back to 1608. And this, in my opinion, is as close as Europe can get to Canada. So if you feel like you want to travel and it's difficult these days to get on a plane, then go over to Quebec City because you'll see it really feels a lot like Europe. You'll notice the building on the top of this picture, which is beautiful and old and looks like a hotel. Your guess is probably correct. It's a Fairmont Hotel. One of those, again, old grand ones that we've already seen two of already. The old town of Quebec City is actually a UNESCO listed World Heritage Site. We talked about UNESCO in the first class. I know some of the students in this class joined after that. So just go back, look at the recordings, go through those PowerPoints and make sure you're caught up. But UNESCO is a global organization that designates areas as important. And once they say this area is important, then that area is protected. It can't be destroyed to build a condo or something like that. And it's funded, so they get money to keep it beautiful. UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The hotel you see up there is the Chateau Frontenac. And here it is from a different angle. It is glorious. It's a beautiful building, really impressive, and it kind of dominates the skyline when you're in Quebec City. And it's an older one. It opened in 1893. And the building itself is a designated National Historic Site. So a National Historic Site is designated by the Government of Canada, and UNESCO is designated by the global organization. So that's the difference there. This hotel has 611 guest rooms and 4 different restaurants, and it is situated in that old town of Quebec City in the Old Quebec section, which is the UNESCO Heritage Site. And here's a different view. This is down that hill. This is Old Quebec City still. This is the historical portion of the city. There's lots of shops and restaurants and things. And every February, it's cold. Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City, they are really cold. I don't know what it is, but every time I go, it's significantly colder than it would be in Hamilton at the same time. So keep that in mind, first of all. But every February, so it's going to be really cold, the city of Quebec completely transforms into a winter wonderland. It's really amazing. It's for something called the Carnival de Quebec, the Carnival of Quebec. And the whole city changes into like an ice and snowy wonderland. They have, you can see here, the Chateau Frontenac carved out of snow and ice. They have ice sculptures. They have snow sculptures. They have a huge castle made just out of ice. I went here when I was younger. I went 3 years in a row with school, actually. It was really, really cold, but it's worth it. The picture at the top, you see a mascot here. His name is Bonhomme, which in French, Bonhomme de Neige means snowman. So you can see why he gets that name. He's the mascot of the carnival. So they sell magnets and keychains and things with him on it. Like I said, there's snow and ice sculptures all the way through the city, and up to 1 million people attend this carnival. And that makes it one of the biggest, one of the most attended winter festivals in the whole world. So pretty close to Quebec City, you have what they call Montmorency Falls. It's a little bit taller than Niagara Falls. You can see there the scale of the people, this bridge that goes over top. And aside from the waterfall, they have other activities there. So this is near Quebec City. It's actually 30 meters taller than Niagara Falls. And there's hiking trails, there's a cable car. You can see there's a nice bridge viewing platform. There's rock climbing, zip lining, different areas to take a picnic. And aside from Old Quebec, the section of Quebec City, this is the most visited tourist site in the Quebec City area. So not too far from the city, and easy way to add something different onto your trip when you go there. Ile d'Orléans is, it's an island, that's the word Ile. Close to Old Quebec, it's only 10 minutes from Quebec, the Old Quebec City driving, and it's connected to the mainland by a bridge. So it was isolated from the mainland for a while, so it wasn't developed as much. So it's nice and quiet. There's some wineries, there's farmland, little cute villages, really nice for pictures, which is one of the main reasons people travel these days is to get good pictures. But if you're into that, maybe you're into photography or you have Instagram and you're very concerned about getting the perfect shot, then this would be a nice place to visit from Quebec City. Popular day trip from Quebec City is the Ile d'Orléans. Then we saw on the map originally something called the Gaspé Peninsula. And this is that peninsula, which means a piece of land that sticks out into a body of water and it's surrounded on 3 sides by water. So the Gaspé Peninsula belongs to Quebec. It does border New Brunswick and it's just north of New Brunswick. But it does belong to Quebec and there's a nice driving route that goes all around it. And Percé Rock, which you can see the little word right there, Percé Rock, is at the tip of the peninsula. And this is one of the world's largest natural arches located in water. Lots of classifying words there, but it is quite impressive when you see it. And this is Percé Rock. So there's a natural kind of tunnel that's formed that goes through that rock. And lastly, we'll end up in the Magdalen Islands, which we call them in English, but in French, they're called Les Îles de la Madeleine. And that is a group of islands that belong to Quebec. It's a little difficult to get to from Quebec. Most people will take a ferry actually from Prince Edward Island. A ferry is like a boat that goes back and forth just to transport people. So this is the Magdalen Islands. It does belong to Quebec. It's a small archipelago. There's another word that hopefully you've seen in that terminology PowerPoint. An archipelago is just like a bunch of islands in a row. So lots of different islands in a group. So this is an archipelago that belongs to Quebec. Like I said, it's accessible by ferry from PEI. Takes about 5 hours from Prince Edward Island, which is a province in Canada. We will look at in the next few lessons. And it will take you directly to the Magdalen Islands. So tourism is a major industry in the Magdalen Islands. People visit for the many beaches and the sandstone cliffs. The cliffs you can see here, and clearly the villages are small and charming. And it reminds me more of what you'd see in Atlantic Canada. So like in Nova Scotia, for example. Sometimes we'll have a little know before you go section in these lessons if there's something important to talk about before you get to a place. In this case, when we spoke about Quebec, I already mentioned this. They speak French. So try to learn a couple phrases, try it out when you get there. If you go to a restaurant, maybe you can say something, you can order your meal, or more simply, you can say hello and goodbye to the person at your hotel's check-in desk in French. They would like that. And also Ontario and Quebec are both really, really big. So if you're traveling long distances, it's easier to fly. There is rail. There's the GO train within Ontario. There's the VIA train that takes you through other provinces, including Ontario. So that is an option, but if you're flying a long distance, or if you're traveling a long distance, it's better to fly. For example, to drive from Toronto or from Hamilton to Thunder Bay would be over 15 hours. Thunder Bay is a city up north in Ontario. To fly, it's about an hour and a half. So you can see there how much time you'll save if you're able to fly than if you drive. I mentioned the GO transit system. We call it the GO, the bus, and they have trains as well. GO stands for Government of Ontario. So you won't find that in Quebec. You won't find that in other provinces. If you're looking for a way to get to Quebec from here without flying and without driving, you can take the Via Rail, and Via Rail is the national train system. So that goes across the whole country. Okay, couple things to do before next week. So there is an activity on Canvas. Every week there will be activities and some map work, different things. Now we're reading the pages in our book about Canada. So the first couple pages that I talked about yesterday, that was an introduction to the book and to world geography. These are the pages for Canada. So take a look through those, and there's an activity on Canvas. There's some questions to answer with the readings. Remember to email me by Saturday with an email. The subject should say cities request. And in that email, you'll have your student name, student number. This is for the research paper, your semester project. You can do it with someone else. You can do it by yourself. It's up to you. You can choose, but email me by Saturday with your decision, whether it's just you, or if you have more than one person in your group, I just need one email for each group. And then I'll reply to that email with 2 cities that you'll research for the research paper. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but some people joined a bit late. So when you're on Canvas, go to the modules page and it will say research paper, and there's documents there to look at and to download. You have your first destination quiz at the beginning of our next class, which will be next Wednesday at, 1 second here, 7 p.m. So all of our tests, whether it's an exam, in this course, a module test, or destination quizzes, they all start at the beginning of class. And for the quizzes, they last 10 minutes. So it will open at 6, it will close at 6:10, and then after that, we meet together on Zoom. You do not need, for the quizzes, you do not need a webcam. You just go on to Canvas and write the quiz. You don't need to be on Zoom. I will be on Zoom at 7 o'clock, my apologies, at 7 o'clock. I get confused with these times because they're so similar from day to day. Yeah, Wednesday, 7 o'clock. So at 7 o'clock, the test or the destination quiz will open. At 7:10, it will close. If you're late, you sign in at 7:06, you'll have 4 minutes to write the quiz. So it's best to maybe sign in 5 minutes early at 6:55 and then write the quiz from 7 to 7:10. What is on the quiz is the next question I usually get. The quiz will cover all of the lessons we've had so far. So introduction lesson, when we talked about the different types of maps, the parallels, the lines of longitude and latitude. It will cover the Introduction to Canada lesson, the Indigenous Canada lesson, and the lesson we did today on Central Canada. Let's take a look at Canvas right now so I can show you as I'm sharing my screen. Quiz. You will find it under week 3. So first of all, week 2, you'll see a Zoom recording pop up here that has today's recording there. Up here, research paper, that's where you'll go to download all of those documents and watch a video on how to do the research paper. Week 2, you see that there's now reading, map work, activity, video, and it's visible for you now. So for example, the reading, it tells you the textbook, which pages, and asks you some questions. So you would type in Ottawa here and check, did I get it right? Check, yes, I did. Wrong, because I didn't fill it in. The map work, of course, it's exactly what it sounds like. On the map, you've got to identify different things. Next up, you've got your activity, and this is where you click and drag. So I might drag, what is this, widespread over, that's First Nations. I might drag that in there and check, and I got it right. So, and then you can go down here and expand to the different regions, prairies, Central Canada. So it's just different ways to help you study. I will not see who did this and who didn't do this. It's not marked, but it will absolutely help you when it comes to writing destination quizzes and module tests, because some of these sentences will be taken word for word and put on your test. Okay, so it will help you to do these. So that's the modules from and the different pages and activities and things to do in week 2. Week 3 is our first destination quiz. It's the first thing that shows up on the weeks that you do have one. And so next week, Wednesday at 7, you'll go onto this page, you'll click this button, and you'll be able to write that quiz from 7 to 7:10. And then we'll meet on Zoom and we'll have our Atlantic Canada test. Okay, so that's it for today. I'll stop sharing, I'll stop recording in case you have any questions and you don't want to be